Well, good evening, wonderful people. It is October 29th, 2024. We are a week away from our big-time presidential election, and we will not be discussing that. Instead, we'll be discussing something that occurred 53 years ago, almost. I am joined this evening by Martin Andrade. Those of us who value his friendship call him Marty, but he professionally goes by Martin Andrade. He is the author of Finding D.B. Cooper, a wonderful book that is still out there on Amazon and places. So please buy it. Us authors, especially authors who are published like he is, and not me yet, but those authors need your support. So please buy his book. Let's see. Let me give some shout outs to everybody. We got Nicole here and Nemo, and there's Nikki and Jay. Mini Pup. Let's see. Hey, Ed Tinsley, Big Ed. I'd call Big Ed. Big Ed's from Montana. He's a fly fisherman, I believe. Hey, Ed. Hello to Agatha Christie in England. Hello there. Late night for you. Hope all is well. Give me a shout sometime. Let's see. Hello. D.B. Cooper is in the chat. And anyway, so we're just going to chit chat about random things and do a Q&A here. And anyway, so Marty, how are you?
Terrible. Thanks.
Terrible. Why, is it cold? What's wrong?
No, well, it finally got cold, but so I've got a 2-year-old who got sick. Then my wife got sick. Then I got sick. And it's just been a nightmare. I'm going to be coughing and choking on cough drops all night.
That's okay. So, did you have what was it? The vid? Was it the COVID?
No, it's some kind of upper respiratory. I mean, like it's like a sore throat, but on steroids.
Mm-hmm. And you are in. Let's see. You are in Northwest Airlines land. You're up in Minnesota, right?
Yeah. I actually don't. I live about an hour away from Bill Radicek.
Really? Okay. Yeah, those guys. I think Harold Anderson lives in that area too. I think they both still live in that Minneapolis area. I mean, they live pretty close to. I forget what is. One of them lives in a place called like Excelsior, maybe. I think it's like there's a town called Excelsior, Minnesota, and Radicek is somewhere else. Yeah. But can anyone see me? Hooli, yes, I see you, Hooli, in the chat. So hello. All right. So basically, one thing that we wanted to, and by the way, anybody's got questions for Marty, please ask him. I know you're tired of hearing my answers to questions, so let's have another D.B. Cooper expert answer them. So any questions, please, for Marty, let us know. But the one thing we wanted to talk about is this damnable idea that confuses me, and I still don't know what to make of it. I mean, I lean a certain way, but basically we were going to discuss Cooper as a copycat. My opinion is that he is a copycat. If I had a gun to my head, just the timing of it, we're talking about 13 days. Just for those who are wondering, I mean, a copycat, we mean that the Paul Sini hijacking was November 13th of 71. This was a guy, a Canadian, who hijacks a plane, an Air Canada flight somewhere in British Columbia, and it flies to, I want to say it's Missoula, Montana, and he gets $50,000. He asks for $1 million or something, but he gets $50,000. And he tells them to fly north, and he had a bomb with him and a shotgun. Kind of a scary guy. He was drinking pretty heavily, and he was going to jump out. His plan was to jump out somewhere over the wilderness in Western Canada, which sounds like a death sentence to me. But yeah, it says it was in Great Falls, Montana, was where they landed for Sini. But so yeah, he was going to jump out with his money, and that made huge news. He was a drunk, and when he was trying to undo his parachute, a male flight attendant hit him over the head with an emergency axe and split his head open, which was fun. And that's how that ended. But Sini spent a long time in prison, but Cooper happened 13 days later. Extortion, hijacking, jump out with a parachute. Is that a coincidence? Is it not? I tend to think it's not a coincidence. But Marty may have different views. So, Marty, why don't you take it away on what you think about Cooper as a copycat?
Sure. So I think the first point that I would make about this is that is to think about it in terms of contribution, right? Paul Cini saw a bunch of hijackings and thought, hey, you can jump out of the airplane with a parachute. That's how I'll escape. So there's one contribution to the skyjack that Paul Cini makes, right? So that's a change in the paradigm. Cooper, what does he contribute? He contributes, so parachute with Cini, but he contributes the aircraft 727, or that method of leaving the aircraft. He contributes the flight configuration, speed, flaps down, gear down. He also has a bomb. And that seems to me to be a lot to ask for in a couple of weeks. And that would be my entire point, would be that Cooper, in order to do this in 2 weeks, he has to have that aviation knowledge, 15-degree flaps, gear down for whatever reason. He has to have the parachuting knowledge right away. Cini was going to one of those paracenters wherever he lived and was trying to learn about skydiving. But Cooper would have to know. He'd have to be so confident that he could do a night jump. So that's something else that Cooper has to know. So he has to be a parachute guy. He has to have the aviation knowledge, 727 knowledge. He has to have the configuration. He has to have the technical ability to create a bomb that is believable to someone who sees it. It can't be like a cartoony, bowling ball with a fuse on it. So there's just in my mind, there is a lot of things that he has to have ready to go if we assume that he is a copycat. Not to mention, he has to be ready to hijack an aircraft in 2 weeks.
Yeah, mentally.
There is, hey, we can rob this bank. We're going to get away with it because we have a novel way of getting away. I'm not ready to do that in 2 weeks. I would have to think about it because that would be a big decision to make. But he's ready to go. So there's that too that has to be aligned for him to do it in 2 weeks. And that doesn't even begin the logistical things. Like he has to, what airport, where is he going to go? What flight, what time of day, when does the sun set? All of these things that, you can go to the library and research it, but he may have his own life going on. Maybe he doesn't because he's a loser, or whatever Jude says about him. But I think it's a lot to ask. And this might be a prejudice of mine too, because I was a Gunther guy for a long time, and I'm an Elenor Ghost guy.
Yeah.
That happened in August. That was before Paul Cini. And I think that is evidence of pre-planning or synchronicity. Even if the Elenor Ghost is not Cooper, it means other people were playing with this idea anyway. And that is my thoughts. I think it's just a lot to ask to say that he is a Paul Cini copycat when they happen so close together.
Yeah. Burger Guitars is asking, was the original Copycat news broadcast in the U.S. too? Yeah, I mean that was a big story. Cini was a big story for sure. In America, it was because it was novel. It was a novel hijacking. Let's see. So Jim has a interesting. Jim Aurelian here says, I'll say Cooper did not copy Cini, but it caused him to rush ahead of his timetable, which is possible. That too. I mean, because you're wondering, are they going to adapt to? Because if he was not a copycat, then he sees Cini and goes, well, maybe they're going to do something and adapt to this before I get to pull it off. Possibly, that makes sense. Because what's interesting, what's so strange is that the FBI, and if you come to CooperCon, I'm going to ask him this question. That's the big news of CooperCon today. Is last night I was able to secure John Detler to come, who is the only original NORJAC agent who is still alive. It was his full-time job for several years to hunt DB Cooper. That's all he did all day at work. His 9 to 5 was DB Cooper with the FBI. He's the only one who's still alive. He was there that night at the airport. But Detler told me something when I was writing my book. And he says it in the National Geographic documentary as well. He says, we didn't think he was going to jump that night, which just always baffles me because I'm like, well, what do you think he was going to do? I mean, he's asking for parachutes. And he's like, well, I don't know. He asked him again. I said, why did you say that to me? You know, why do you think that? He goes, well, we just couldn't perceive it. He said, it just never happened before. So we just didn't think it was possible. And it is weird, though, that they would not think that, because it sounds like, I was like, he's telegraphing to you what he's going to do. He's lowering the stairs. He's get parachutes. I mean, you know, they're even like listening in, and in the radio chat, you know, Tina's, you know, there's radio chatter of Ratchek saying, the girl says he's wearing the parachute and strapping the money to himself like he's gonna, you know, like he's going to jump. Like, okay, well, anyway, but so Cini, you make good points there. Yeah, I thought about that. How much time does it take to pull one of these things off? I don't know. I mean, I guess the issue is, yeah, go ahead.
No, go through the copycats. Now, I think the ones that jumped, and how long did each one of them plan? Because we know McCoy took forever.
Yeah, Mac took a long time.
So, and I don't know. You're the expert on the copycats, so that's what I'd be curious about. Because you told me, I think you told me on a chat once that there was one hijacker that planned it in 3 days or something.
That probably that might have been Hetty, maybe. I mean, Hetty was like, Hetty had just got. I don't think Hetty had been back from Vietnam for even 2 weeks. I mean, he just gotten back, so I think it was Hetty. Heineman, I have no idea. Heineman's like a closed book. Who knows about him? But we know Mac started it back in very early 72, and he didn't do it until July. So now he was delayed a month because he was spotted in the airport in St. Louis by a buddy of his, which is bizarre. Like, what a weird story, right? You know, but McCoy took a while. Yeah. I guess the issue is
McCoy had a lot going on, though. He had a family. He was in school,
college, and yeah. I mean, National Guard stuff. Oh, goodness, there goes my light. Goodness gracious. McCoy had a lot going on. He's trying to fix my little light there. But anyway, I guess the issue would be that he would have to have the issue, but I guess the difference between us is if he's not a copycat, or if he is a copycat, then his knowledge base has to already be there completely, right? I mean, he's got to know. I mean, if he's not a copycat, then he's probably one of these Air America adjacent dudes.
Yeah, he'd have to be. He'd have to be someone like Ted Braden, someone like Billy Wall, someone who had all that knowledge ready to go, plus the ability.
Well, and the desire to be a criminal like that too. I mean, that's the weird part of it is, although I guess, I mean, that is the one thing about Air America that I do like is people forget that Air America was like, in a way, a lot like we think of, if you think about like Iraq, what was it? Was it Blackwater who was in Iraq? The mercenary guys? Yeah. I mean, 260 Air America guys were killed in Vietnam. You know, I mean, that's a lot. They were mercenaries, you know, and so a lot of them were not, they were guys who, a lot of them couldn't get jobs for airline. And, you know, there were pilots and things who couldn't get jobs with the airlines for whatever reason. And so they were kind of out there being mercenaries, and that is kind of an unsavory sort sometimes. Right. But yeah, your knowledge base would have to be there if you're copycatting him. Yeah, I'm trying to think of more things. So, yeah, Elsinore. Well, here's what's strange about it is, I like to say there are several instances in the 302s where we have people asking about jumping from planes prior to the Cooper hijacking, right? There's a guy named Gary Samdahl who was he was like suspect number 3 or something. He was an air traffic controller from Illinois. He's from Portland, actually, but he was living in Illinois, and he was flying home the day before, 2 days before Thanksgiving. That's what it was. 2 days before Thanksgiving, flying home to see his family. And he goes into the cockpit of a Northwest Orient 727 flying from Chicago to Portland. And he starts talking to them about jumping out the back stairs. He's like, do y'all think I could jump out the back stairs? And they're like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, I'm a skydiver. You think I could do that? And they're like, well, probably. He's like, yeah, I think it'd be an easy jump. And so after the hijacking, of course, Now, what's interesting is they reported him to security as soon as he got off the plane. They said this guy was asking weird questions. So they already had a security log of this guy, so they knew exactly who he was already. So a few days after the hijacking, Northwest Orient says, "Hey, one of our security guys said that they got a weird thing 3 days ago of a guy asking about jumping out the back of a 727 and how he could do that, right?" And so that, of course, they investigated this guy, and he wasn't Cooper. He had a really good alibi, and he didn't look like he was rejected by the witnesses. But there's that. Then there's sort of the one about the one that I'm sure, about the screenwriter who was.
That's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a guy who was writing a screenplay apparently, and he started talking to a couple pilots. He was on a plane, and there were some pilots who were sitting with him who were deadheading, which means flying as passengers. And he was sitting in the middle of these two pilots, and he starts talking to them. He's like, "Hey, how would you go about either jumping out of one of these planes or throwing something out?" And they're like, "Well, you would need to be unpressurized. You would need to be yada, yada, yada. And it would help to have flaps." And, and so, yeah, Mary Johns calls him the San Diego to Burbank ghost. There we go. That's exactly right. And they couldn't find who he was. He told them what he was working on. He was working on a comedy about something. And they tried to find out who he was, and they could never find out who this guy was. But so we've got in the Elsinore, if you believe Lyle Cameron, which I don't think Lyle Cameron was making it up. I mean, he had no reason to lie. He benefited nothing from that. So if you've got Elsinore, you've got the Burbank ghost, you've got Gary Samdahl, then I guess it's not as crazy, is it, to think that there'd be adjacent thinking going on.
Right. And my thing about Cooper has always been to try to drag down his skill set.
Yeah.
Because I think that if he was actually an expert skydiver with military training, and he was, a 727 pilot with commercial aviation experience, and also an engineer apparently, then that guy should be readily apparent even today. We should be able to just to find him.
Yeah.
If you bring down those skills, then I think it's much more likely that we'll find them. By the way, hey Jude, hey Nikki, hey DB, we'll see you guys.
Yeah, everybody's in the chat. Let's see. Okay, Jude says to Marty, "Are we at the stage where there's a quiet acceptance among the vortex that the case will never be solved?" What do you think?
It has always felt like we were one piece of evidence away. And I think I made this comment on the Facebook group that was 10 pieces of evidence ago. Tom Kay has produced a lot. If he's produced 100,000 pieces of evidence, and we still haven't found, a linchpin to solving the case. I hate, because I've always been the optimist saying, yeah, we'll solve it. No problem. Something will pop up. But that was 10 years ago. Now it's much less likely that someone who knew Cooper is going to reveal it before their deaths, because they'd be in their 90s now too.
Yeah.
So I am in agreement, Jude. I don't think we'll ever get there in the absence of like DNA that we're really confident about, which I can't imagine that, other than the hair slide. I don't think there is.
That's it. It's the hair slide
sample. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I don't think it's going to get solved. Sadly, I hope people don't unsubscribe, but I don't think it's going to get solved. But maybe though. I mean, that's the thing. It's possible, but like you said, there's the only real DNA that I'd be comfortable with is the hair. And even that, as I always joke, it might come back to be a circus dwarf who was on the plane the day before, who knows, but I'm pretty sure it was Cooper's hair. But yeah, I like, as you said, I thought about that too, that if somebody was protecting Cooper until he died, then they probably would have come forward by now, because he's probably long dead, or at least now he's certainly dead, I would think. I mean, this guy's, even if he's 40 years old, even if he's on the younger end of it, right? He's that'd make him mid-90s now, and heavy smoker, not seeing it. No, he's gone. So if he even survived, he's definitely gone. So yeah, the idea that somebody's protecting him is going to wait, they would have come forward by now. Yeah, I mean, it's always possible that the hair slide turns up. It's always possible that somebody finds a bunch of money in Grandpa's attic. You know, you never know. The problem is, would they even know what it is? That's what always scares me to death. Is, you know, when somebody dies, I'm sure I'm sure everybody in this chat has dealt with people who've passed away. That somebody goes in there and cleans up everything. And 95% of the stuff that you pick up when someone dies just goes in the trash, sadly.
Yeah.
And I could see a scenario where some grandkid is throwing away Papaw's crap, and, you know, who knows what this is? These old crinkly $20 bills. Let me get rid of them. You know, I don't know, something like that. Or, you know, I mean, I don't know if Cooper would have kept the original hijacking note just as a memento. Probably not. I would destroy that. I would destroy everything, I would think. Right. But I mean, I don't know. If people are strange. I mean, I don't think Mac would have kept anything from his skyjacking. I don't think. In fact, Mac tore his note up and threw it up the back of the plane. Famously, it all blew back in his face when he tore his note up, and he was crawling around the stairs trying to grab pieces of paper from his note that he had torn up. So yeah, I don't think so. But let's see. The plane ticket, yeah, I don't. Jay Weiss says, have you ever noticed the Magnum Force movie connections to Cooper? I don't know what Magnum Force is. Do you know, Marty?
No, I know Dave did a lot of that research on connecting movies to this to the case, and I don't know what to think about that.
Yeah, I don't know. Mini Pup, you're a funny guy. Didn't Grider solve it? No. No. He has not solved it, and I am just waiting for him to produce something so I can attack it. Very happily attack it, because that is not DB Cooper's parachute. And with respect to Rick and Shantae McCoy, their dad was not DB Cooper. Their dad was Richard McCoy. And as I said in my video about Richard McCoy, that should be enough, because he was probably way more interesting than the real DB Cooper was. His life, he was a badass pilot. I mean, he did a lot. McCoy was an interesting cat, and almost it's not necessary to make him also DB Cooper. It's like trying to make George Washington also be, you know, Abraham Lincoln or something. It's just not necessary to do that. He's Richard McCoy, and that's enough. It should be. He's a famous FBI, you know, guy. Let's see. Yeah, and I mean, the movie connections. Airport is interesting. I mean, if you do watch Airport, that does make sense. You know, the whole idea of the briefcase bomb, which, you know, I've tried to newspapers.com briefcase bomb to see where that concept comes from. And it's in the 60s. I mean, it's not an old concept. It's not like from World War II or something. Well, actually it is, because it's they did that with Stauffenberg when they tried to kill Hitler. When they tried to kill Hitler, was a briefcase bomb. Yeah, when they tried to kill Hitler, was a briefcase bomb. But I know you're pulling my leg. But Pat says Magnum Force, a plane is hijacked. By the way, people, on Tubi, that website, they have all of the FBI episodes from the FBI series that if you watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that Leonardo DiCaprio's character is famously in, the FBI. Those are all on Tubi, and those are really cool watches to watch those, because it really does show the FBI from that era. As I mean, they've got, you know, teletype machines going and all this other really cool stuff. Like, in fact, I wonder if I can bring up a clip here of from that. I think I can. There's a clip here, for example. This is from the FBI. I've always wondered. So in the Cooper case, you see these teletype machines. You see these teletypes all the time. These things called teletypes, which are like faxes, essentially primitive sort of faxes. And here's a clip there from the FBI to show of them writing a teletype. And so I was like, well, I'll be damned. There's the teletypes that we always see in the Cooper case. So that was kind of neat. And then another clip. I'm trying to think another clip. There's even a clip from the FBI series where this is no lie. They even in the FBI series, I think a lot of it takes place in Portland. And there's a scene in there where they are in the Portland airport. Yeah, look at this. There's a scene where the guys are they're in PDX, like looking around PDX, and it's just, I'm like, oh, it's Himmelsbach and Paul Bibler or whoever. Like, look at that, Portland International Airport, and they're in the airport, or they're on a movie set at least. But there's stewardesses walking around, and like just interesting little clips like that. Or another one that I like that really kind of hits home is they go to the parking lot of the airport at PDX, and they're looking at cars, and one of the cars has a Washington State tag on it. And I'm just like, oh, okay, well, that's very convenient for me, especially for my videos. So in the future, my little short videos, if I use a lot of these clips for filler, that's why I'm doing it. Look here. So you can see them airport parking. And this is from 1970. So here they get out, and in this clip, they get out and they go and they check out this tag. And it just reminds me of them when the agents actually went to the airport parking and talked to the attendants there. There's Washington tag there from 1970. So then they get in the car and they're talking to everybody on the Tom, hey, tell Himmelsbach I want my hamburger back. Whatever they're saying there. But anyway, those clips are pretty cool. Let's see. So it's Dixie Norma. So that's a funny name there, Dixie. Says, Ryan, have you been using a different shampoo? It smells really cool. Okay, cool story. Let's see. Okay. Jude says the Zodiac used teletype paper for his letters. He tore the top and bottom off the letters. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, the Zodiac stuff. Marty, have you ever done Zodiac stuff?
I'm not into it. I tried. I got Drew's book, and it just the guy is anti-charisma. Like, there's nothing. I mean, it's just an ick. I don't know.
I'm with you.
Not interested.
No, I agree. I don't like anything where a girl is being stabbed repeatedly in the back while she's hogtied. That just doesn't. I don't enjoy that because I mean, as a prosecutor, I actually dealt with things that weren't too dissimilar. I had to prosecute murders like that and see the crime scene photos and talk to the victim. I mean, that was just no fun. It's almost like I have PTSD from that stuff. It's just too gross. Thankfully, the Cooper crime, none of that. Unfortunately, although whenever we talk about Cooper, we have to remember, though, that, and Bill Mitchell actually said this with tears in his eyes at CooperCon. When last year we had Bill Mitchell on stage, and he was choked up because we was talking about how it's not a victimless crime, but he wasn't talking about himself so much. He said, yeah, my mother was freaked out by it. And then he said, look at Mac. He pointed at Mac and said, look, Mac spent 38 years in prison, because of DB Cooper, essentially. And I think Mac, joked, tried to bring some levity to it. He was like, well, if it wasn't Cooper, it'd have been something else, put me in prison, but it was, no, I mean,
people got killed.
Several people killed. I mean, I think, gosh, at least I know three copycats were killed. I know that two of them in the same time. Then there was another time Glenn Tripp was killed. That was the three cheeseburgers and the Head Start guy. He was killed. He was a copycat. And so several people died. Passengers died in botched attempts and some copycat attempts. Some of the passengers were shot accidentally by either the hijacker or the FBI shot them. So, okay, let's see. Michael says, who was the mugshot KK51 that the Stew said was closest to Cooper? Was he investigated by the FBI? No. So we don't know who that guy is. That's just, KK51 is just a mugshot from there he is. There he is there. KK51 is just a mugshot from a giant book of faces, essentially. Like, look here, I'll show you here. Dadgummit. Okay, hang on. Let me pull this up here. This is the FBI catalog, the one that I missed out on last year because I was looking at Cooper stuff. Let's see. So KK51 comes from this book right here. This is a facial identification catalog. Okay. And this is the one from this. This is the one that the stewardesses would have looked at. So we don't know who these guys are. These are random mugshots that are just compiled in a book for the features that they have. So, when she said that she liked KK51, she was just saying that she liked his look, but she wanted him to be look a little different. Which ended up what they did with him is, you can see it on the Bing sketch here, is they took KK51 and they asked how they should amend it. And what they did there is, they made his face skinnier, and they made his hairline, I guess, not stick up so much. But as you can see there, and they made his nose a lot smaller, but you can see that KK51 was the template for the Bing sketch, which a lot of folks don't realize. I didn't realize that until a few months ago. Even I was like, oh shit, that's the same guy. Look at the mouth is the same.
Yeah.
The facial lines are, next to the nose are the same. So they just made KK51. They just, made his face longer and shrunk it, made him look, like that. So that's kind of cool that they did that. But bottom right is Anglin. Yeah. Clarence Anglin he probably would end up in one of these. By the way, those guys lived. Marty, do you have any strong feelings about the Alcatraz escape? Non sequitur there.
I tend to think they got away, but it's a good swimmer can make that swim relatively easily. And the question is, what kind of shape were they in?
They need to swim. They had life jackets.
Well, you still need to swim.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Well,
what's weird is I actually found something the other day that is crazy, and I've never heard this. And I'm gonna have to double check this, but it seemed like a good source online that was saying that there is an FBI document from that incident where they found a freaking like portable little boat like washed up on Angel Island, that island there. So they found the boat that they used, and they never made it public. I said, wait a second. So you found the boat.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, where are they? Did they get knocked over by a rogue wave or something? And they found paddles on the shore too. So it seems like they at least made it that far. But yeah, somebody says that they had a boat waiting. That's another thing too, is there are some people who said that, there was a report from a, I guess not Coast Guard, but some kind of officer who watches the shore, who watches the bay, who said that there was an unidentified boat that was like loitering around that night. So I don't know. They could have connected with somebody. And then they do know that there was a car stolen from Sausalito or somewhere that night. And it matches the same, like the next day, somebody called in and said, I saw 3 guys zoom by me in a green Chevy or whatever. And it was a green Chevy that had been stolen, according to the police report the night before. So, there's lots of things like that. And I think the main thing is that photograph of those guys in Brazil. That just seems a little too, that seems like the Anglins, somebody's saying that they did find the raft made of the raincoats. Yeah. Let's see. Real questions here. Nikki says, has Marty done any follow-up work on the stylometry? Where does he stand as far as Barb being Clara? Yes, the $1 million question.
So if you are Facebook friends with the Foremans, you know that they've been busy lately. We were going to digitize a number of Barb's letters, and I have done. You start reading textbooks on stylometry, and I've probably read 3 books since then.
Wow!
So it's a work in progress. I took the criticism to heart. I'm kind of in a catch-22 because there is no way to increase the sample size. There's one Clara letter. There's one D.B. Cooper letter in the Gunther book. And there's no way to replicate it to get a bigger sample size. Believe it or not, I did try, but nothing worked. So I am working on it. I'm guessing it'll be a year or more before I come to any firm conclusions. I still think, I remember I told Tammy the stylometry was not going to do it. We need to make parallels between Barb's life and what we find in the Gunther book. That is a stronger evidence. And that's pretty much where I'm at, because you can't increase the sample size. You have to work on the other parts, the explanatory power of the thesis. And I think that's actually very strong, but I'm, I got a 2-year-old, I got a job, and it'll take time.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if it could be, I mean, I know that the Foremans, and I have no reason to doubt them. They seem like honest people, but I mean, they say that they mentioned Max Gunther before in regards to Barb Dayton. Yeah. And if I knew for a fact that that Barb Dayton actually was a Max Gunther fan, I mean, that would help, I think, for sure. If I knew that for certain.
It's a very specific journalist.
Yeah.
It's a very specific journalist to pick out this guy who wrote for True Magazine and was known for the Zurich axioms. And he was interesting guy, but it's like a very specific journalist to pick out. Yeah. One thing I'll note too is that the Foremans have an article from, I think, the student newspaper at Washington or something. I don't remember where it is or what paper it was, but it was definitely Barb's story of landing south of the Columbia, and it's all there. So Barb had punked or hoaxed or told her story anonymously to another journalist or a group of journalists before, and they've shared pictures of that with me.
Was that in the early 80s or when?
Don't know. It's a mimeograph copy, and if I ever get back out to Seattle, I'm going to go in and try to find that article, because it has to be within a certain period of time, and see if we can't get a date on it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Michael Strick in the chat says, if the Foremans still live in Woodburn, I believe they do, says, I can help digitize documents or fetch physical items for them if I need to. So yeah, we might need you there. It's the Barb stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Gunther really changed for me when we found the Gunther FBI file, because it's one thing to punk Himmelsbach, a retired FBI agent who's a bit of a blowhard maybe, but it's another thing to actually contact the real FBI, right? And the fact that Max Gunther did that, we know for a fact now that he did that, saying, hey, I think somebody might be hoaxing me, but I'm not sure. That gives a lot of credibility to him not completely making it up. I still think he probably made a lot of it up, but I think he was inspired. It didn't come all from his imagination, as I'm saying. It's not a work. It's not kayfabe. It's not completely a work. So it had inspiration from somebody or something, so because I was leaning toward it all being fictional and being some kind of performance art sort of stuff, right? But now, it still could be, but you're taking a real risk by wasting the FBI's time, if you're faking it,
Yeah.
So okay.
It's, as someone who has gone through the Gunther book line by line and tried to source every factoid in the book, there are things that I think that Gunther would not come up with. And a few of the big ones are talking about the uniform of the paratroopers, the legs or the pants that they wore and the boots that they wore, very specific. And it would have been something that Gunther, I don't think, wrote about. I've not read all of Gunther's stuff, but I've read all of his books now. And it's not something that he was ever obsessed with. So that's something that I'd be very surprised that he would come up with on his own. And there's a little tidbits like that suggest to me that he got information from other people that are not mentioned in the book, because he lists all of his other sources. He talked to he talked to skydivers, he talked to FBI agents. He mentions these people in the book, in the text, and there are things that I don't think came from them either that would have to come from somebody else. So that's, like I said, work in progress. These things take time, and I'm still, I would say that I'm not as confident as I was when I was on Darren's podcast. I'm about 90%, not 99%, just because, like I said, you take the criticism seriously. People come up and say, well, there's a problem with this. And you have to reevaluate and do your best to see if the thesis still holds up to any kind of standard. And I think the standard would be preponderance of the evidence, because we just don't have enough evidence, period, in this case, let alone the Gunther book.
Yeah. All right. I won't keep it on the spot too long. Let's see. Yeah. Pressure's off. So somebody's asking about the guy on the road in the suit. So he's talking about on the Lewis River Road. Yeah, Lewis River Road. He's talking about, I guess it's Jean Babitsky was her name. I've got that file here. There it is there. Just says, we'll read it. At approximately 11:30 p.m., November 24th, 71, Miss Babitsky was traveling east on Lewis River Road when she noted a man walking beside the road. The man was just west of the Frederickson Road crossing and on the north side of Lewis Road, walking west. Miss Babitsky recalled that at the time she thought the man appeared strange because, although the weather conditions were poor, the individual was wearing only a dress-type white shirt and dark slacks. Miss Babitsky described the individual as approximately 6 feet tall, medium, dark, hair fairly short, age 30 to 40. Miss Babitsky could not recall whether the man was carrying anything and could not identify him as the hijacker when shown a composite of the hijacker. In addition to the above, Miss Babitsky advised that for a number of years she has lived in the Woodland area and that this was the first time she had seen anybody on Lewis River Road after dark. So, now, important to remember, though, that was not told to the FBI until March of 72, right? So you always have to, if it's like, why didn't you report this earlier, sort of thing. I think what happened was this was in conjunction with the Army coming back in March of 72 to Woodland area. And I think they started re-interviewing people. And I think that's how they came across her story. Now, the father started embellishing it a little bit. There was an article from 76 where the father is talking about his daughter, and she says, oh, the guy had a mean look. And she said that the guy was carrying a package under his arm, which, the daughter just told the FBI in 72 that he wasn't carrying anything. And then, her father starts embellishing it a little bit. So I'm curious about that. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, Bill Rollins here says, I have met with Jean Babitsky. She was a nice lady and incredible witness. Yeah, I think she is too. But I think it's more likely because of the jump location that's not Cooper, because he's not jumping that early. But I think it's quite possible, though, that, let me pull this up. It's quite possible that this guy did have something to do with these break-ins here, or one of these break-ins or something that happened there. If you can see this map here, people can look. This is on the far left. There is Casey's store was burglarized on the night of the hijacking at about 11 p.m. It says east of it is. This was burglarized, the store, after 11 p.m. on Wednesday, which is the night of the hijacking. Cigarettes, cigars, Polaroid film were taken. Now, I can't zoom in, but this intersection of Frederickson Road and Lower River Road is about half a mile, maybe a mile east of Casey's store, right? And that's about the same time that burglary happens, close in time. So maybe this was the burglar, perhaps. Maybe he was a vagrant, something like that. The problem with the story is that Cooper jumps much later than, I mean, I even proponents of, I mean, I know Flyjack, if he's listening, Flyjack will go about as far as Battleground South. And Flyjack is a more northerly jump guy, but even Flyjack puts Cooper south of the Lewis River Road or south of the Lewis River because it just doesn't, the time doesn't make sense. I mean, what are your thoughts on it, Marty?
Well, the Lewis River Road is not walkable. I found that out when I went out there with Nikki and Tess. It is not a walkable. It is extremely dangerous, at least now. And I can't imagine it was any better without lights 50 years ago. So I would not expect a pedestrian to be out there. I don't know. It's way too far north. I think it's very clear that Cooper jumped after, the plane at 8:11 was already south of Lewis River.
Yeah.
And I think if Cooper jumps at 8:13, which is where I think he jumped, that's 12 miles.
Yeah.
Past that. He would not be going he would not be going north. He would be going south toward the lights of Portland.
Right.
And it's interesting, but I think you're right. It's probably, somebody who is doing other things, and that we know lots of bad things were happening. There was a large population of homeless people who were breaking and entering, living in cabins, traveling the whole area, camping.
Yeah, especially at that time. There was a whole thing there. Let me see if I can. I'm trying to see if I can. That Lewis River Road area. If you go to Google Maps and stuff, it's got some fall off on the, on the shoulders there, as you said. There's not very. It's not really a good. No shoulder on the road. Not good to walk, for sure. Let's see. Nikki's got a great point. Nikki says that's true. There was a wedding party at the golf course that night. Maybe somebody got too drunk and wandered off. Well, that's a possibility too. I mean, Cooper did not happen in a vacuum, right? I mean, life went on that night. There were other things happening, and we get that. And we get that a lot in Cooper. I mean, it's like somebody mentioned Thomas Johnston earlier, or not Thomas, Joe Johnston earlier. The guy the skydiving 48-year-old bank robber who is arrested for drunk driving at 2 p.m. on November 24th in Woodland. What does he do from Arkansas? What is he doing there? Right. That is weird. There's of course, the small plane, which has been resolved. Yeah. That was weird to them, but that was just so mundane. That was a guy, I talked to that guy. He was like, oh yeah, I just went to go pick up a plane from elsewhere and I flew it back or whatever. It was a clunker. That's why it sounded crappy, because I was whatever. I mean, he was circling his own front yard, waiting for his wife to come outside to turn on the headlights to her car so he could land on his front yard. Yeah. And that's why he was circling for 20 minutes.
You have that guy that goes into the lake. He goes into Lake Merwin and he's missing.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the beauty of that guy who goes missing. He survived, thankfully. But what's funny about that is that the call was, there's a news article that says that the call was received at 8:13 by the sheriff's department. The next day, it's at 8:13, a call was received from the sheriff's department. Oh, okay. And that is a huge coincidence, right? Because the whole Lake Merwin thing has kind of been, we've been able to kind of kill any Lake Merwin connection because of we know that there were no lights that were flashing, and there was a triple cloud cover. You're not going to see that anyway. And the same guy who was flying around for 20 minutes waiting for his wife, he flew the area for 50 years. And he told me, he said, I couldn't spot Lake Merwin on a clear night sometimes where the dam was, because it was just dark. There was no lights. And he said, you're not going to see that from 10,000 feet. That's ridiculous. I mean, again, 10,000 feet is up there. I don't think people realize that. One of the best advice I've given, Chris Cunningham said, he said that everybody in the Cooper case should download, I think it's called like Flight Radar or Flight Aware. One of these apps where you can like, it looks at your GPS and like it shows little planes flying overhead of your GPS. You can click on them and it says how high they are. So like there's planes flying overhead. I can like pull my app out and push the little button there and it'll say, AGL above ground, whatever. And it's 12,000 feet or whatever. And that's way up there. I mean, 10,000 feet is way high. People don't realize that, how high that is. So you're not seeing anything other than, the glow of the lights, I wouldn't think. Let's see. Donna Elliott, this is Bill Rollins. Donna Elliott said that some of the patrons at the Ariel Tavern saw someone walking near the lake that night. Well, I mean, okay. Again, walking near he didn't jump near the lake. So, I mean, who cares? I mean, people saw Walter Recca in Clay Elum allegedly.
Yeah. Donna had a lot of stories.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Donna also heard the jet fly right over her house and, all kinds of things. Yeah. She says that Nikki says Donna said that Cooper walked in her store. Even. Yeah. Yes. Cooper's the father of her kid, I'm sure, too. Oh, well, rest in peace. I think he passed away, too.
Yeah, he passed away, too.
Yeah, Brian. Yeah. I don't want to joke about him. So let's see. Yeah, time to go play 8-13 in the pick 3. That's about right. Let's see. Michael Strickland says he'd like to see the mug shots from Joe Johnston versus the Joe Johnston that was arrested. Well, I mean, I don't know why it would be a different guy. I mean, it is weird, though. And again, always weird things. I mean, this guy ends up, this Arkansas bank robbing, skydiving 48-year-old who's in Portland or area ends up being arrested right over the damn flight path. And then he's dead in March of 72 in Portland, just dies of something at 48. So it's like, oh, well, I mean, that's a weird coincidence too. I mean, I'm not totally opposed to this guy being involved somehow because that really seems so incredible. I mean, don't you think that's of all the things in this case, that one in the FBI files made me go, Jesus, like, like this guy, like, I mean, again, folks, if you've not heard me say it a million times, he is suspect number one. Literally, he was the first D.B. Cooper suspect, Joseph Henry Johnston. They get a panicked call as soon as the hijacking's over, basically from Arkansas, an FBI agent saying, "Holy shit! Like, we just got a call. Somebody's watching the news or whatever, and they said there's a bank robber who was taking skydiving lessons in West Memphis the past 3 months. He's 48 years old. This is his name. He's on parole. Okay." And the next day, the FBI goes, "Oh, shit." And they go to the post office to find his address, because that's where you find addresses. The post office says, starting last month, he started having his mail forwarded to Portland. It's like, okay. And then part of the FBI file says that they said he had been practicing jumps and he had bought flight maps for Portland to Seattle. Like, and he was a pilot. He was a illegal pilot. He had a whole slew of arrests and tickets for flying dangerously low, flying without a license. He was an unlicensed pilot, essentially. He had stolen planes before to do bank robberies. And I love the guy. We found, Chris Brower found the guy. I forget his name, but he found that guy who Hoover wanted this man dead. He was like, this is public enemy number one. He was some young guy who would rob a bank, then drive to a local airfield and steal an airplane and fly off and then just land somewhere and do it again. And he did this for years. His escape was to steal airplanes, and he had no pilot's license, nothing, just self-taught pilot. And he was actually paroled. We were laughing because he was actually paroled about a few months before the Cooper hijacking. It's like, oh, okay, well, there's that too. But he doesn't look like Cooper. I don't know, he's pretty ugly. I wish I could find a picture of that guy. But okay. Oh God, here you go, Marty.
Okay.
What's Marty's current belief on how the money got to Tina Barr?
Oh boy. So I'm this is going to be a non-answer. I was working on because the theory that I think is still investigatable is that he died and that he impacted somewhere. So I was working on another watershed, which was the Burnt Bridge Creek watershed, which actually extends into the drop zone. I mean, it extends almost up to Battleground. And there are places where a money bag could get down. It gets annual flooding. It would end up in Vancouver Lake. And during a flooding stage, Vancouver Lake would go over would spill over into the Columbia. So there was a trajectory from Battleground to Tina Bar over multiple years. And Burnt Bridge Creek had a major, I think it was 74, 75. It had its worst flooding in that watershed. I worked on this for weeks. I was literally trying to get measurements on culverts where the money could go down, right? And then Tom K took a shit on it. Like he just said, well, there's no silt. The diatoms are wrong. This is wrong. There's no way to do it. It was not multiple floods. It was not during that time. There's no way. So Tom's evidence came out right after I had worked on this for a very long time and completely crushed me.
Yeah.
And that has been the story. 10 years. You take every theory and you work it and you try to think, okay, did Cooper drop the money at there's a landing right there at Caterpillar Creek? Mm-hmm. Well, again, same problem. No silt, no wrong diatoms, wrong time of year, doesn't work. Maybe Cooper landed, near the river. No November diatoms. The money can't go that far. The money sinks. It'll go down to the middle. It's 40 feet of water in the Columbia. It goes straight down. When it finally gets wet, the bag will go down and stay down there. Well, the dredge doesn't work. And my conclusion is that a natural trajectory from the drop zone, and I don't care if the drop zone is the Columbia River or the drop zone is Battleground. There's no natural trajectory that gets you to Tina Bar. So there has to be mechanical or human intervention. Mm-hmm. And at that point, we're missing. It has to be Cooper, or it has to be someone that Cooper gave the money to, or it has to be someone who found Cooper's body. I mean, I don't know. The one thing I point out, and we've talked about this before, Cooper knew where he landed. So everyone attacks the plant theory. I was not a big, I thought it was a plant, and I didn't think it was a plant, and I've worked now I think that's a possibility because Cooper knew where he landed. So if he lands in Orchards, or if he lands in the suburbs of Vancouver, he knows that. We don't. Mm-hmm. So he says, well, the money would go into Columbia, and then there's got to be a place for me to throw the money, and then eventually the money is found by Brian. That at least provides a reasonable trajectory. And I know that you have told me that, well, Cooper would know that they were looking in wherever. Cooper would know that they were looking in the wrong place, but Cooper would know where he landed. Yeah. And would be able to find a reasonable place to put the money to make it look like he drowned. That to me is one of the few possibilities outside of, a vulture picking the money out of Cooper's corpse and making a nest somewhere near Tina Bar. I don't know. It would need to be done. He would have to do this plant though the night of the hijacking or the next day or something, because my reasoning being is that he did not know that they were going to figure out where he jumped. Right. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, until they started searching in Woodland area on the news 40 hours later, right? He had no idea when he jumped that night. Okay. He had no idea that they were going to figure it out where he jumped. Right. So, but he knew the plane flew over the Columbia River. So, hey, that night, perhaps Cooper throws shit into the river or whatever. Right. And now then again, money will sink, which is true. But I don't know, I've always liked the idea of, because you really need to put yourself in Cooper's shoes, and people don't like doing that. Maybe people don't like to actually do that, but
if I could really see myself throwing, if I land in, I don't know, Orchards or some damn place, and I am, I walk to my car or call my accomplice or whatever, and I throw everything into the trunk of my car, and I'm crossing the Columbia River Bridge, the I-5 bridge at 3 a.m. in 1971, there's no CCTV. Nobody's going to have me on candid camera, right? If I'm crossing the bridge in 1971 and there's no cars around me, I could see myself right now saying, you know what? I'm going to chunk all this shit into the river. I'm going to pull over real quick on the bridge and just throw it off. Because you know what? It disposes of the evidence. And guess what? If they ever find it, well, then they'll just assume I died. It'll help maybe. So I could see myself just throwing shit into the river if there's nobody around at 3 a.m. crossing the bridge, that night. And maybe for good measure, he put one of the bundles in the parachute. And I don't know. I doubt it. But because although Cooper was prepared to give up bundles to the stewardesses, so maybe he didn't care about sacrificing a bundle to the gods of maybe somebody finds this one day, and thinks I died. But that's asking a lot. To think he was that prescient of a guy.
See, my expectations when I found out what Tom was doing with the diatoms was that they're going to find winter diatoms. We would know the water went into we would know the money went into the water in the wintertime, and we'd be done. Like that's where Cooper landed. But that wasn't the case. It's so frustrating. So on the bridges, there's only a couple of bridges at the time that Cooper could have taken. And the railroad bridge is actually the more popular among the...
Did you drive across it?
You can't drive across it. No.
He'd be walking. I didn't think so. So you have to walk it. So.
Yeah, you had to walk across it. But that was where the hobos... There's a lot of literature about the hobo camps in that area and about, the transients and what they did. And that railroad bridge is very popular versus the interstate bridge, which was not good for pedestrians. So that's... that's plausible. I don't know. Nothing makes sense to me anymore. No. And it's sad because I've been working on this for 10 years, 10 years. And I'm literally back to where I started, which was a crazy theory that Cooper put it there as an homage to Tina. I don't know. There's no,
look, people can mock that all they want. People can mock that all they damn want, but you know what? And maybe it's sometimes late at night if, if I've had a tall glass of water or something, I think about it and I say, look, let's say Alice Hancock was the stewardess who did this. What if when Alice went back there to try to save Tina and said, hey, Tina, will you go find some playing cards? And instead of Cooper saying, no, go back to your station, I'm keeping Tina. If Tina had got up and Alice had taken her spot like she wanted to do, Alice, to her credit, was the senior stewardess and was trying to do that. If it had been Alice the whole time, if we found money buried behind Alice's restaurant, we would go, God. But because it's, what I'm saying? There are moments where I go, I don't like to think about that, but that's a hell of a coincidence. And the coincidences are all through this case, right? Joe Johnston, the ghost, the Elsinore ghost, perhaps the Gary Samdahl asking about jumping out of a 727, flying to Portland the day before the hijacking. A lot of coincidences. Tina Barr's probably a coincidence, but is it really that ridiculous?
I personally don't think so. And I remember I got into arguments on some of the old DB Cooper forum threads about the nature of tipping, because Cooper did try to tip the stewardesses. Whether that said something about Cooper from a sociological standpoint, or whether that signaled that his socioeconomic status had been higher than a transient in his life, and it was the nature of those threads at the time that it was not received well. Pretty much any theory that you threw out there at the time would just get knocked down by somebody and then shit on for the rest of whenever you brought it up. So I stopped bringing it up. But I think that's at least plausible. We're looking for plausible explanations. Now that there really isn't a good natural explanation and the dredge theory is gone, River transport is gone because the money has to go in. The money basically can go into the water at the north edge of Caterpillar Island, and it would make it to the south edge of that beach, and then it maybe eventually move its way north to where it settled. But it can't go much farther than that. And we know Cooper was not in that area. We know he didn't land in that area.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my, because I remember looking at Caterpillar. I remember looking at Caterpillar Island and thinking that, because it is so close to the road, that if somebody tossed out a bundle, that it would land in the weeds there. And, you know, it's so close to the river that maybe the flood carried it or something, you know, pushed it at least. I mean, because money will sink, but a flood can push money, right? Or the ice, for example. That was it. That really fascinated me when I was writing the book. And I was reading all these articles from 1980 about the FBI, what they thought about Tina Bar. And John Detler mentioned this too. He's like, yeah, that was our thought at the time. He said, we were confused as hell. I said, well, yeah, no kidding. But I said, we still are. But
so was Leonard Palmer. So was and I forget the guy's name, but the hydrologist from the Army Corps of Engineers that they hired. Yeah. He didn't know how the hell the money got there.
No, but what's interesting,
he's still alive. I tried to contact him, but
Oh, really?
I talked to one of his flappers, and then they never got back to me, and they stopped answering my.
Well, we have his 302, I guess, which is just as good. But there are several in the FBI files. If you read deep enough, 2 different hydrologists, amateurs, sent letters to the FBI saying, "Hey, I think I have a theory. I think it was the icebergs from the frozen river a year before that basically because I mean, it was in the papers. It was shown that, they were confused at the time because in the papers, there are articles where they show the flight path and then they show Tina Bar far away from the flight path. Like they show it going over PDX, right? Really. But so there were smart people were looking at that going, well, how does the money get there? How does it wash up? And 2 different people, hydrologists, said that they thought it was the big frozen flood because the river basically turned into a bunch of icebergs the previous winter, like in spring, like maybe February of '79. There were huge icebergs like floating down the river, and they were tearing up the sides of the Columbia. And so their thought was maybe if it had been sitting, sitting in the weeds or something all this time, that it would be pushed there. But again, the problem is, I guess icebergs are a flood. I mean, I guess that would be the same issue you'd run into. And again, diatoms. I think you would have winter diatoms on the money if they were pushed by an iceberg. But I don't know, maybe not. But that was their theory, and the FBI endorsed that theory. That's actually in the 302s somewhere. Where it's in a newspaper article. They're saying, one of the FBI guys says, well, our prevailing theory is that it was icebergs pushed it from the flight path area. It pushed it down here. That was they bought into it. Nikki says that's the Fazio theory. Nikki, are you saying that the Fazios think it was ice also? I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that. So, and for those wondering, $6,000, which is what was found on Tina Bar, is $46,000 in today's money. So Cooper was giving up a lot of money to if he was doing this as a gag, right? But again, what's interesting though is one thing that Cooper tells us that Cooper offering money to the stewardesses tells us is that Cooper did not have a $200,000 problem, because if he's willing to get rid of a chunk of it, then he didn't have some, nobody was holding his kid hostage in Vegas, for $200,000. Yeah. So he had, there's that. Ryan, if they found the briefcase, might it have DNA inside? I guess. I mean, probably. I mean, if it had his razor in there, if you believe Eric, that Cooper grew a beard and then shaved his beard in the airport to look like himself, and then did the hijacking. Most bizarre theory ever. That is one reason why I do like people like Skip Hall, is just that thought of Cooper as somebody who normally wears a mustache. If you normally wear facial hair like you do, if you shaved and committed a crime and every sketch anybody ever saw was clean shaven guy, their brains would never connect you to clean shaven sketch guy, ever. And so I like the idea of some of these suspects who have mustaches. That's not a terrible idea.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's Skip Hall, just saying that, I'm not going to like shit on people who are like, oh, here's my suspect and he has a mustache. People shave, and that's a good disguise. It's an easy disguise, really, to shave. Let's see. Or the opposite, just grow a beard for the hijacking, and that works too. Let's see. My theory, the dredge theory is dead, people, because for a couple reasons, but mainly because the dredge would have torn up the money. It would not have stayed together. The dredge that they use, there's two dredges. There's a dredge that like picks it up and moves it. Then there's a dredge that sucks it up and spits it out of a turbine or something, right? And it turns out it was the turbine type that did it. Let's see. Didn't one of those TV show researchers find a briefcase latch in the water at Tina Bar using a metal detector? I think that was
Josh Gates.
Yeah, that was Josh Gates. And also I think that there may be some conflation there because Bruce Smith claims, I believe not some claims. Bruce Smith says that Dorwin Schroeder said that they found a piece of a briefcase or something when they were looking at Tina Bar, but that would have made it into the 302s. I'm quite certain if that had happened and it didn't. The weird ones though are, there was that 302 a couple of weeks, a few vaults ago, where a guy called his local news and said that he had some Tina Bar or he had some Cooper money, and he gave it to the news station, and that was it. He said that some family friends found it or something up near Kalama. I don't know. But we were emailing back and forth with Tom about that, all kinds of stuff, because the serial numbers matched allegedly. Now the guy could have given the serial numbers over the phone, and maybe when they received the money, there's no follow-up 302. And I think if it had not been a hoax, there would have been a follow-up 302 about a real serial number being found, but there's just not. And I don't believe in conspiracies in this case. So there's that. Let's see. Nikki asked you about what do you think about the chute being spotted on the bridge?
So when was the alleged sighting?
Within a week of the hijacking.
Not real. And I'll explain why. One of the people that I've talked to is actually a college friend of mine, and he is a recovery diver in Mississippi. He is a recovery diver in Ramsey County. He's in the Mississippi River all the time, recovering bodies.
Gross.
Right. Now, the Mississippi River is cold half the year up here. Okay. They have charts of what water temperature would be for the body to sink versus body to float. And we went over it. We went over they actually had the temperature data for that night for the Columbia. If Cooper lands in the Columbia that night, whether under a parachute or not, he sinks to the bottom. The water was less than 10 degrees centigrade, which is the magic point where the body sinks. He would have gone straight. He would have sunk like a stone. When their search pattern, when temperatures are that low, is a product of the depth of the water. They do not. There's no drift for the river at all. And the Columbia is especially slow moving. Mississippi River is about twice as fast, actually, as far as the flow goes.
I would think so, yeah.
So there is no way it could be, if it was within a week, Cooper would have sunk like a stone, and that river is hollowed out. So, million to one, he hits like the 8-foot stretch of the river where it's not 40 feet deep. But it's a commercial channel. They keep that relatively open. So no, if it wasn't at the bottom of the river, then it was not him.
Well, I guess the idea though is that Cooper had tossed it into the river.
It doesn't make sense. I know that, and I don't know is it Chris that's been working on that?
What the Cooper? Well, yeah, on that story, talking to those guys. Yeah, it's Chris Cunningham.
So Cooper has to drag his parachute wherever he lands.
No, remember I was saying earlier. My theory of what I would do is I could see myself landing, stashing the parachute and the money, walking to my car somehow, or calling my accomplice, whatever, and then throwing everything into the trunk. And then at 3 a.m., as I'm crossing back over the Columbia River Bridge, saying, well, there's nobody around, pull over and chunk everything out into the river, because that's one way to dispose of all the evidence. And like I said, if they ever found something, well, they would just assume you went into the river. So it's a win-win. So yeah, it's definitely not illogical.
It seems unlikely. I'm not.
Yeah.
It just, to me, and I lived in Minneapolis for 6 years, and I walked the Mississippi River all the time, Minnesota River all the time, and there's things that look like parachutes in the river. People throw everything. People throw apartments full of stuff into the river to get rid of it. I'm serious.
Hey, one of our suspects, what's his face? Melvin Wilson dumped $200,000 of counterfeit money in a 55-gallon drum into the river. Right?
Yeah.
So you're right. Yeah. People throw a lot of stuff in there.
In a large city, they're going to use it as garbage. And I mean, especially with the hobo camps and tents and things there, I just don't buy it. But from your perspective, maybe. How do you dispose of the parachute? Yeah,
it depends on if it was actually a parachute canopy. I mean, if that was actually, but like you said, it's almost like Eric's bed sheet, right? You're seeing Jesus in the toast, right? It's a hobo camp. So around there, it could have been a bed sheet from a hobo tent or something, right? That just blew away in the storm the night before, whatever. It's possible, but so DB Cooper here says, Ryan, could you ask Marty about his research into the census records and him thinking he could narrow it down that way? That's Gunther stuff, right?
Yeah, that would have been Gunther stuff, because that provided a narrow, that narrowed the list. There's about 100 million males that could be Cooper, and Gunther nailed it down to Trenton, New Jersey, or even New Jersey, and even World War II veterans from Philadelphia, New York. There were a few thousand of them. But without that choke point, there's no way. It would take maybe in 100 years with artificial intelligence and complete digitization of all records, including the records that we lost
in the fire
from World War II that burned up. Then maybe, but now that I believe Gunther is out the window, there's no way.
Well, see, my problem with Gunther anyway was always, I mean, it's like, what do you believe or not? Because, and how do you know what to believe when you're reading Gunther? Because clearly, let's just say it was real. Let's just say all of it's real. But Clara was Cooper's lover, yada, yada, yada. I mean, I'm just saying, if Clara contacts me and it's like, hey, Ryan, I want you to write the story of my dead DB Cooper husband, I'm not putting in there that he was in the 31st Infantry Division in World War II and that he went to Ole Miss and that he, what I'm saying? Like, if that's what he actually did, I'm obfuscating it. I'm not wanting people to be able to find this guy, because I'm protecting her, for one thing, and I'm protecting my source. And again, if I'm Gunther, my publishers are going to say, why don't you crawfish that lady and solve this yourself with those clues? We'd rather have you publish a book about finding the real DB Cooper than about this fantasy story, right? And so that was always my thing, is like, why wouldn't Gunther just solve it himself? If he's got paratrooper who went to Syracuse on the crew team, it's like you could really narrow that down. So that's all bullshit. I mean, we know that's bullshit, because so what do you believe, what not to believe about Gunther? And even the name, that was my problem with chasing down the name, that like the Dan LeClaire name that you guys did. It's like, well, I'm not naming my DB Cooper, I don't know, Billy, Broughton, if it's Nicky Broughton. I mean, what I'm saying? I'm not doing anything similar to my guy's name, right? So I don't know. So how did you square that? Because surely you knew that some of it had to be made up, right?
Oh, for sure.
So, I mean, that's my question. I always want to ask you that. It's like, how do you, I mean, I don't know. It's just like you're looking in New Jersey for a guy. I mean, I don't know. I would change so many details.
You're right. And what sold me was the connection to industrial chemicals. I thought, well, okay, if they're not going to make, if that's true, what else could be true? But it's
hard.
It's a little embarrassing that I bought it for 10 years, but
yeah, I know.
As I tell people, you pull every thread.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, I spent 10 years on it. I pulled the thread all the way off the reel and nothing came of it. So we don't have to waste our time on it anymore.
No, and I've never criticized.
I'm not proud. I mean, you get excited about things.
Yep.
And you dive into it and you go full bore and then you accept the result. If there's no enthusiasm, then you don't get anywhere.
Yeah, I've never been critical of you or Dave Feudman or anybody for Gunther because I'm like, look, I chased tie particles for a year, and it got a couple good suspects out there, but I mean, it's nothing. There's no shame in it's like, and I don't know why people attacked the Gunther stuff. I never attacked it. I attacked it intellectually. I wasn't like insulting people like you guys, because like I've always said, if there's any lead at all, chase it, anything. Because geez, we're really running out of things the FBI ran out of leads really quickly. And Detler told me that last night on the phone. He said, yeah, we just had to, he said he liked, because I sent John Detler a copy of my book and he liked the part because I kept mentioning in the book that the FBI had to keep waiting for the phone to ring because they ran out of leads that they could generate themselves really quickly. Like, because they investigated the skydiving community. They investigated some Air America dudes. They investigated smoke jumpers, anything they could think of that generate their own leads. Some of the things were cool. Some of the ideas that they had, checking life insurance stands at PDX. Like, what if this guy bought life insurance? Because, what if he was, and that I wrote in the book that was probably inspired by Airport. Right, because in Airport, it's a suicide essentially in the movie. The guy's killing himself over the Atlantic. He's going to blow a plane up. He buys a huge life insurance policy so his wife can inherit this money by his demise. That they'll never figure out it was a suicide. They'll think the plane blew up, and that's the whole plot of it. And so they checked insurance stands at PDX, which was a clever lead. They checked when Ron Nichols showed up. Ron Nichols shows up in '73. He says, hey, can we check the phone records of every payphone in Clark County? And they said, yeah. And they did. And they contacted, they found 20 odd calls that night that were weird. And they called each number and they X'd out those numbers. And so they tried. Okay, Dodge Ram says he wasn't military. I doubt that very strongly. Wouldn't you, Marty?
So he would almost certainly have to be
age.
As an able-bodied male in that age range, he was either at the tail end of World War II or he was looking at Korea. He would have been through the selective services. He probably would have been drafted. It is almost guaranteed.
Yeah. Especially him being, as you said, apparently able-bodied enough to pull this off.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's rare to find men born before 1950 who weren't in the military. Like, rare. Something was usually wrong with them, or they were super college educated somehow and got deferments that way.
Yeah.
Right. Your average Joe who was born in 1945 or 1930 or whatever is going to be in Korea, or whatever. Look at all the baseball players. I think about that all the time. All the baseball players who, like Willie Mays, was in Korea. Yogi Berra. All these guys were in World War II. That's why we had the All-American girls baseball teams. Is because all the men were gone. I mentioned last time on the podcast that if you watch the beginning of Band of Brothers, they talk about how there were people committing suicide because they couldn't go join the army. So like in World War II. So, and it is a giant. And in fact, the only suspects I know of who aren't military, there's two that I can think of. And that's Milton Vordal, who killed a lot more Japanese than he ever could have with a gun in his hand. And Dick Lepsy, who was one of our younger suspects. So he was not in the military that I know of. So that's it. Literally every single body else. I mean, even miscreants like Alan Cooper, who was this, he died a couple years ago. Alan Cooper was this rabble-rousing guy who went up and fought. Well, he went up and during the occupation of Wounded Knee, which was several federal agents died and stuff. It was a pretty hostile thing. Alan Cooper, who I actually FOIA'd his photograph because I'll pull it up here. So, and I got a copy of it from Albuquerque. Florence Schaffner or Alice Hancock was shown his photograph and liked certain things about him, about his mugshot. And so I said, well, let me see that mugshot. So I'll pull up Alan Cooper. You can read here what Alice Hancock said about his. She says, Albuquerque nose is too handsome. Unknown subject's nose was narrower. That was her only complaint with Alan Cooper, really, was that she liked his face. But she said his nose was narrower. That looks like a pretty narrow nose to me, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So if it's too handsome, whatever that means, maybe too, I don't know what handsome means, but she liked Alan Cooper a lot. But even that guy he was like an Indian fighter, or not Indian fighter. He was like on the side of the Native Americans. He was part of the American Indian movement, even though he wasn't at all American Indian. And there's all this stuff about him. Like Albuquerque loved this guy. He died in like 2005, but he was always like anti-war protest guy, anti-Iraq, anti-Bush, like just kind of a hippie kind of guy. Even he served 3 years in the Marine Corps. I was like, geez, so, I mean, all these guys were military. Do you know of any suspects who weren't other than Vordal and Lepsy? I can't think of any.
No, I can't think of any. And in the book too, I list a number of things that Cooper does that seem like decisions a military person would make. So, and in particular, my dad and I made the case that Cooper would have had paratrooper training. I've kind of gone off of that a little bit since then, but I can't imagine him not being in the military. For the primary reason is that was where the majority of the parachute training you would get, right? If Cooper's not a skydiver, if he's not a smoke jumper, the only other place to get this training is through the military.
For his age range. Yeah. For his age range, yeah, for sure. Because, we look at guys like Mark Meltzer who are younger, they get parachute training through hobbying. But, being comfortable with, and that's what stuck out so weird about, Joseph Henry Johnston is this guy took up skydiving lessons after he was paroled from prison at 48 years old. That's strange. And Mary Johns mentioned, she mentioned earlier about seeing his mugshots in a vault recently. Let me pull that up. I've got that as well. Not good quality. I'd like to see better quality. Not that the guy's Cooper, because he was sitting in a jail cell at the time of the hijacking for being drunk. He was in a drunk tank. But here he is there. Bad quality. Can't see it. But says photo taken. You can see his nose is really wide there. Yeah. That's a huge disqualifier for Cooper, But that's his mugshot. Not a good quality of it, but he's there. And I don't know. What do you think about Dave? Gets on me about. I don't know. Dave didn't watch a lot of these, but Dave gets on my butt about me rewriting history on the Cooper case, and I'm like, I'm not rewriting anything. I'm just we've got new evidence, and we've got new evidence. Like he gets mad. I don't know why, not mad, but like, I always harp on the nose lately, right? I've been talking about the nose nonstop because every damn page I see is them talking about the nose. So it's like, I'm not like suspect grifting by saying that. I have no suspect. I don't care. If they said his nose looked like it had been smashed by a frying pan, I'd be on here saying his nose looked like smashed by a frying pan. I don't care what his nose looked like, but when we look at, for example, I'll pull it up. When we look at all there's several guys who they say that they like their nose, right? And it's these dudes. Okay. And I mean, look at these noses. These people said, I like their noses, right? Those are thin noses, kind of beak-like noses, right? You got John List there. You got Donald Sylvester Murphy in this little hat. You got Fred Catalano, and then you have the aforementioned Alan Cooper there again in that picture there with the handsome nose. So, I mean, like, there's something to that. Do you agree?
No, for sure. There is such a difference now between where we were in 2007 and where we are today. The amount of information, and you have to use it. You can't ignore it.
Yeah.
I agree completely. I think that the older researchers like myself who've been around a while have to let go of some things.
Yeah.
There are some things that were just assumed to be true about the Cooper case that are not. And it's been very difficult if you're not in the weeds reading these stupid 302s every month that you're going to miss.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It changes things. I mean, what I wrote in the book that it's almost like AD and BC. Like there's pre-vault and post-vault. Like, I mean, so much has changed about it. Here's another example for people who are watching. We've got some viewers. Let's see. Another thing about the nose another nose compilation that I put together here on these noses that these fellas have. Let me pull up another one. Here we go. To my noses. Look at Cooper noses. All right. Oh, crap. That's hard to read. I'll try to read that for people. It's too small. Let me pull that up so people can read it. But McCoy, in the picture of McCoy, what is highlighted, it says McCoy's nose. These are the stewardesses talking. All these are stewardesses. McCoy's nose was broader than that of Cooper. That's McCoy up there at the top left. We've got John List again. We've got Robert Gregory saying List's nose looks good. We've got Alice saying his nose is narrower. We've got Fred Catalano. He likes the long nose of Fred Catalano. And we've got Bill Mitchell saying that the nose and the mouth of Donald Sylvester Murphy there are identical to Cooper. So there's something there, something there with that. And Cooper being ugly. I mean, that's something that we didn't think about because the Cary Grant sketch isn't particularly ugly, right? But now we've got them saying that guys like Don Burnworth are handsomer than Cooper. You're going, geez, because, I mean, Don Burnworth is not exactly a Lothario, right? If you look at, let me pull up his photo for those who don't remember. This is what they said about Don Burnworth. They said Don Burnworth is younger looking and was a more handsome man than the hijacker. Flo says, that was Tina. Flo says Burnworth too young looking and too good looking. Okay. And then we've got Gregory saying he has some resemblance. We have Cord Spreckle saying if he were 10 years older, he would look like Cooper. So, but yeah, for the two women to say that dude is better looking than Cooper. I mean, whatever. I mean, look, as I mentioned, we even have Cord Spreckle, okay, who he was a married man. I mean, I don't know what his preference was, but he was a married man at least. Cord Spreckle is using Cooper's physical attractiveness as a metric. We have a man in the 302 saying that guy's too handsome to be Cooper a couple times. So he must have been ugly. I mean, it just is what it is. And I mean, I don't think that. I mean, the Bing sketch doesn't particularly look ugly. I don't guess, but I mean, he's, I don't know, he's kind of strange looking. I guess he looks like an alien.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like people can, and again, as we mentioned, just simple logic, Marty. People say, "Oh well, we've always attacked the nose. That nose looks stupid." Well, I'm like, well, Roy Rose did not invent that nose.
Yeah.
He drew that nose because they told him to draw the nose like that. So that's must what his nose looked like.
Yeah.
Right? So, if you have a suspect with a giant nose, if you look like, Walter, if you like Walter Recca here with his frying pan smashed nose, well, you're not. I mean, this guy looks like Shrek. I mean, now Cooper may have looked like Shrek with HIV or something, dying of AIDS, but maybe a skinny Shrek. But Not that. So let's see. More questions. What about the guy from Michigan who is a store manager? That's Lepsy, right?
That's Lepsy.
Yeah, that's Dick Lepsy. That's they have a picture of that's this guy here. Yeah, that's Dick Lepsy. Nice skinny tie, but not a clip-on. But that's Dick Lepsy there. His problem is just no aviation experience. I think he goes missing in 68.
Yeah, 3 years. 3 years
earlier. Before. Yeah. Well, it's not like Melvin Wilson, who's 2 months before. This is 3 years before. I think Lepsy's probably. I don't know what happened to Lepsy. I don't know. He was probably pretty miserable. I'm not saying miserable, but he had 4 kids, and he was one of these guys that kind of a Gunther type of guy. I think Lepsy.
Yeah.
He stole some money out of his safe, grabbed his cigarettes, and just left his car at the airport and gone.
So Lepsy's favorite book series was actually a big, thick. It's actually a multi-volume collection by Will Durant on the history of philosophy in the Western world, which is
sounds like good book.
He was a very smart guy, and he married his high school sweetheart. They had the kids. He didn't. And when you marry young and have children young, you can't go back to college. There's things that you can't do. And he probably felt trapped. And what I've always been interested in, and I have thought about contacting Ross Richardson about this, is have they looked for familial DNA? Because it sounds like that he sounds like he left with a woman, and he absconded with a woman, which is the typical way that men leave relationships like that, is if they already have, if they found someone else. I think that's in the divorce data. So that'd be my guess. And I know that the DNA has proved that Mel Wilson survived, his absconsion.
Right.
So I don't know. That's where I would go with Dick Lepsy. I've looked at that one before. That one's really tough because, again, no evidence, and he didn't want to get found. I have a hard time believing that he would leave behind 4 kids.
Yeah.
That just having gone through what I did with mine, I can't imagine it. So I go back and forth because maybe he did come to a bad end. I don't know. As for him being Cooper, I don't think there's any way.
No. Somebody's asking about Jerry Alter, the art thief. Jerry, look, I mean, again, I mean, Jerry Alter certainly looks like he could match the sketch. You take his glasses off there, he looks rather Coopery a little bit with his little. He has that little weird nose, right? And he's kind of olive. He's certainly olive skinned for sure. What do you say?
He's too good looking.
Yeah. That guy's not ugly.
He's a good looking guy.
Yeah, he's not ugly
great looking, but
no, he's not. Yeah, he's not ugly enough to be Cooper. I mean, it's funny. Like I don't know how to make a guy ugly. Like my Cooper sketch that I made. I spent a lot of time making my Cooper, and I guess the Cooper that I ended up with. Let's see, and I use him a lot. Let me try to find my little Cooper that my Cooper sketch that I tried to hell to make. Let me find him for everybody. Let's see. Talk amongst yourselves, people. Sorry. Where is he? Where is my Cooper? But like I tried to mix the sketches. Yeah, this is the guy I came up with. And yeah, somebody's like, he looks like Sean Connery. I'm like, well, I guess he does. That guy there. So like that's a mix and match of the comp A, comp B, small nose, thick lip, olive skin sort of. I mean, that was my vision, at least for a while, of Cooper. And then I had to come up with an uglier Cooper. And I'm trying to think of, this is kind of the guy that I came up with because I don't like Cooper's eyes. Like I said, I don't like making Cooper's eyes. I don't trust his eyes. That guy. I mean, that guy's not attractive, I don't think. So
yeah, that's close. I think that's close.
Yeah. Especially because I gave him the turkey neck and I gave him the brown suit, which is something that we've learned in the vault era, right? That his suit was brown, not black. They thought it was black because his overcoat was black, but his suit was brown. which is interesting. A brown suit with a black tie, that doesn't match. Interestingly enough, now that I look at it, I don't think it does. Maybe I'm not good at fashion, but yeah, so that's kind of where I am with Cooper these days. Is he looks like that, kind of very gaunt looking, pouty lip, nose. I like that Cooper a lot.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, before we wrap up here, we're almost at 2 hours. Let's see. Here we go. What suspects do we feel are ugly enough currently? That's a good question, Nikki.
Oh man.
Do I even have?
Oh.
Let's see. Well, let's see. LD,
I mean, Dom is not
ugly. LD's not ugly, I don't guess. I don't know. I'm not. It's not my preference. So, Catalano looks ugly to me.
Yeah, I'm still fascinated by Catalano.
Me too. I don't know what his story was, but when your own airline turns you in, you're a problem.
Yeah.
And they couldn't find his information, and he had moved to south of Portland. He was living in Eugene, actually, I think. Yeah. He's from New York, and they had no idea where he was, and he never provided them with any information about where he was the week of the hijacking. He was on vacation from his route, and and if you're flying, that's actually a good idea because he was a purser on Eastern flights for maybe American Airlines, and so he flew Far East. That was his thing, kind of like Kenny Christensen. And that's not a terrible way. I don't know if flight attendants went through customs like you would now, or if they searched your bags, if they flew to Thailand or somewhere, that would be an easy way to launder money or to, I mean, it's not a terrible idea. I mean, what do you think?
I would have to ask my father, honestly. He was traveling a lot back then. Yeah. So I don't know. So my father was in Thailand in 1971, and they spent American money wherever they wanted to in Thailand at the time. So that would definitely work. Would it work in? I'd have to know where they're flying. But I would bet you, yeah, that'd be a great place to launder money.
Well, Vietnam, you could definitely launder money in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure. Yeah. So I don't think Gossett doesn't look hideous. I wouldn't say. Skip's not hideous. I don't think. Now Skip can look weird in some pictures. I'll say that. Skip can look kind of homely in some pictures for sure. Yeah. E. Howard Hunt's not an attractive guy, I don't think. No. Sorry, Bill Rollins, but Joe Lakich is a handsome fellow, I think. I think if I looked like Joe Lakich, I could go star in the movies. That guy's not D.B. Cooper. Sorry, Bill. Langseth. So Langseth, the only photograph we have of Langseth. Mm-hmm. I have FOIA'd. My FOIA is processing for the photo that they have of Langseth from 71 or so. This photo I found in his college yearbook. So he's a lot younger. So I can't, it's hard to say what he looked like later on. Orville Lyons, I could see looking not so attractive as he got older, maybe, but that's from college also. Petey's too bald to be Cooper. Sorry, people. Yeah. It's just not reality. James Roman looks kind of odd, I guess. I mean, possibly. I mean, if Roman had not been living in Vancouver for a while before the hijacking, he'd be better because I don't think Cooper was going to hijack a plane where he lives because it's too risky to be spotted by somebody who knew. Like I said, I've always said that Cooper ran the risk of, if he lived in Portland, of Joe Blow seeing Cooper from a distance and being like, oh, that's the guy, he looks kind of like the sketch. And 2 years ago at the barbecue, he was talking about jumping into Normandy. He was a paratrooper, at the barbecue, telling me that guy was a paratrooper. He looks like the sketch. I saw him in the airport from a distance. He didn't see me, but I saw him, that's too much of a risk, I think. So I don't think Cooper was living close to the area. Do you think so? You think that's
No, and I spent a lot of time, because I was pursuing Catalano, aka the Egg Harbor suspect in the Shelton lead, and they were not in that area. And I tend to think that that's the case. And I know that your copycats were all relatively far away. 500 miles.
About 500 miles on average. Yeah. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, and Catalano. Now he was living in Eugene, but he wasn't from the area. So, you know, I don't think people would know him that much. And Langseth was living in LA. And I've always liked the idea of somebody from LA staying in the West Coast a little bit. You know, that kind of the Elenor Ghost thing. So what are you? I mean, you're still, even though you've slacked off of Gunther a little bit, you're still an Elenor Ghost believer.
I would, to me, just reading through the FBI files, the amount of time that they spent on this, and we're talking a lot of files. We're talking about a lot of investigation, a lot of man hours. That they couldn't identify who this person was after all that work. After talking to every skydiver in LA and tracking down all these people in all these groups, that seems very suspicious, because we also don't know who Cooper is after a huge investigation. Yeah. If Cameron was making this up, I think he would have fallen under the pressure, quite frankly, of all that work that they were doing around him. Right. You know, I don't know, but I'm about, if I had to put a number on it, 80% convinced that the Elenor Ghost was also Cooper, just based on the fact they couldn't identify him, and that he looked like the original sketch and not, you know, the second sketch. Mm-hmm. But I'm not married after 10 years of Gunther. I'm not married to anything anymore with this case. I am done.
Yeah, we can't be.
You know, so
the Gunther. I mean,
everything is like 50% to 80%. Like that's all you can guess.
Yeah, the hills that I die on, I mean, I'm dying on the hill of him.
The nose.
I'm dying on that, because that's, you cannot escape that. I mean, given when every stinking time they're showing a photograph of a suspect, if they use the nose as a metric, then that's telling. I'm dying on that hill. I would die on the hill of him being darker complected, because people can say, well, they like to say that, and it is true, there were witnesses who told the media that they thought McNally was Mexican looking, right? But, and that's true, and he's not at all. Mac is as waspy as it gets. But the fact that guys like Dennis Lisney use the word olive to describe Cooper, that's not. And you know, people could say that maybe it was the low lighting in the airplane made him look olive. But when Dennis Lisney is not in the airplane, he's in the airport. And Hal Williams also said he was darker complected. I think he even used the fact that so many use the word olive is interesting to me. They're not just saying he's dark or whatever. He's olive. Like that's a choice of word that they use. Yes. So I think. I'm not going to die on it per se, but real close to that. There's a couple other. I'm not gonna. I mean, I am things. I'm over 85% sure. I would put 85% over that he survived. I think you're probably on that train too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
I want him to die. I'm with Jude. I'd like him to be dead, but
yeah. It'd be easy for us to do it too. Yeah. And he's an asshole. I mean, it's like, again, I say all the time, people think this guy's Han Solo in a business suit, but he's not. I mean, he was not a good person. Like, nobody wakes up, and I know Dave got mad at me about that. I love you, Dave, but like, he was like, you're trying to make Cooper into being an asshole. I'm like, well, he was. I mean, like, if you rob a bank, like, which is what he did. I mean, I tell people, if you can't imagine your suspect robbing a bank, then he probably didn't do this, because it's the same mindset as I'm going to extort money from people by holding people hostage. You know, you're not a great guy, you know? Let's see. Somebody says, Marty, are you likely to quit the game without a suspect? You know, you've never had a suspect, so not that I'm aware of. I mean, right?
No. Obviously, I thought the Gunther text was the route to a suspect, and we never got there. But I am just fine. I am just fine not knowing.
Yeah.
I don't even think we could know. And of the suspects that have been around, obviously I like Vordal for certain reasons, but I think we're at a point now where it's difficult to fathom a good suspect without more information, and we don't have it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and Nikki mentions that he is the one who figured out that Lyle Cameron was the redacted name in the Elenor Ghost report. Good for you. That's right, Nikki. Yeah. Good man. Let's see.
Nikki, by the way, does some great work. I don't know.
Who?
Nikki. I haven't complimented him lately, but yeah, he continues. He's still working,
grinding
the phones.
Yeah, he'll work the phones. Nikki, speaking of Nikki, says, "What do you think of Shale's suspect? Shale Sonnen's suspect." Let me try to find a photo of this guy. Let's see. I'll show it to the group. If you're not in the Facebook group, let me try to find the Shale suspects. So somebody found out who, because Shale Sonnen has been, the MMA fighter, has been claiming for about a decade now that he knows who D.B. Cooper was, and that he was a Native American who had some connections to the Yakima reservation, which is not too far from the drop zone. Which, I mean, that was actually my first thing in getting into Cooper. Was about looking into the Native American angle, because I'm Choctaw, and my grandfather looks very much Native American. Let's see. Okay, so let me pull up. This is Shale Sonnen. The problem with Shale Sonnen's suspect is he's too young. I think he was 28 or something at the time, which is just not happening for me. But I tell you what, if you told me this guy was 45 at the time, okay, that's certainly kind of smallish nose, the high forehead, the hair looks good, the long face looks good, but he was 28 and he was I think he was Special Forces Native American, that's another angle that we looked into, is that, Native Americans have a higher proportion of Special Forces in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam than white man. So if Cooper, and with the American Indian movement happening at the same time, I believe the Alcatraz occupation that lasted for 6 months ended, I think, 2 months before hijacking. The Wounded Knee thing I mentioned happened in 1972. They occupied Mount Rushmore, I think, the month before Cooper hijacking. So there's all these American Indian things. That could have been one way that they thought of financing their operations, possibly. But I don't know. Let's see. Okay, so he says not Special Forces. Nikki says the guy was not Special Forces. And we've got D.B. Cooper here saying that he thought you were heavy on William J. Smith. No, that's Dave Feudman. Yeah, that's Dave's. Nikki says this guy worked for a Pacific Northwest Gas Company, not Special Forces. Okay. Well, Mary John says the witnesses probably would have said that guy was too good looking to be Cooper. Yeah, probably so.
Yeah.
But I like the Native American angle. I wish I could pull up a picture of my grandfather, because he looks like, what you would expect Cooper to look like. Let's see. We've got Wendina. So I'm looking, we're almost at 2 hours here. We'll try to go to 2 hours. Let's see. Asked about Shale suspect. Yeah, Wendina. This is the granddaughter of Milton Vordal, by the way. She says, hero worshiping a freaking terrorist makes no sense to me. Well, I agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Not a good guy. And yeah, your grandfather, Wendina, has shared. That was probably the damnedest thing I've ever read in my life, was when she shared a Christmas letter from Milton Vordal to her, which is like, this is not like, joy and the holiday season. It's like, I'm glad that you're not a idiot Homo sapien. You're smarter than most Homo sapien monkeys out there. It's like, oh, thanks, Grandpa. It's like weird. I mean, that was the craziest thing. Yeah, Wendina, there you go. She says, my grandfather was a douche. There you go. Well, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for sure. Let's see. DB Cooper says, we need more Native Americans and Latinos as suspects. I could not agree with you more. 100%. And we don't have any. We've got a fake. We have, Lorenzo Pasillo. We have a fake. We have a fake Latino in Skip Hall, who that's one reason I liked Skip Hall was, he's a guy who it's like Skip Hall is what you think exactly what Robert Gregory is describing is this fakish kind of quasi looking Mexican, Indian looking person. And that really looks like Skip Hall a lot of times. Here's another Fred Catalano photograph. Fred Catalano has no chin, looks like. Seems like that'd be a noticeable feature, right?
Yeah, and that hair.
Yeah, a lot of hair.
That was after the hijack.
Yeah, this photograph is like 1977 or something. So, yeah, Cooper needs to have not much hair. There's Braden with little hair. I mean, Braden probably has too little hair, I think, to be Cooper. I mean, remember the stewardesses said that Cooper had more hair than McCoy. So McCoy doesn't have a lot of hair. McCoy's got about as much hair as I do. So, I think that's. And by the way, you'll like this, Marty. My photograph of the sled test people. John Detler liked this photograph, but he said I labeled Charlie Farrell wrong. I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah, Charlie's who took the picture." I said, "Oh, so I don't know who it is because I was able to match up all the names in the 302. So whoever this guy is not listed in the 302 for the sled test. So he said he thinks he was a guy with the airline. So, but I have no idea who he is.
That's not Paul Sutherland. That's not Al Lee.
No,
that I don't know who that could be.
No, because like I said, we have the names of all the guys on the sled test, and there's no name that's missing. So I have no idea. Because I saw a photograph of Charlie Farrell when he was older, before he died, and he was very skinny. And I was like, well, that guy's kind of heavy looking, but maybe he lost a bunch of weight. And John Detler last night said, no. He said Charlie was always kind of skinny. So I was like, okay.
That's weird.
But he liked the photograph, but he said, you'll never see. He said, that's the only photograph you'll see me in because I took all the photographs, right? Like this photograph. I love this photograph here because I adore this photograph because that's Harold Anderson sitting in the exact chair that he sat in during the hijacking. They're in his flight engineer's chair. Pretty neat, I think, to see that. Love that. So let's see. We got a bunch of comments. Oh my gosh. Let's see. All popped up. John Detler's a good likeness to the sketch. I don't know about that. Let's see. Billy the Kid was a serial killer. Some people we obsess over bad people. Yeah, Billy the Kid was a bad man, a really bad individual. She says, admittedly, I am a bit obsessed with Eileen Wuornos. Well, I mean, Eileen had some trauma. I'll say that. I think that she had some issues. She wasn't all there. I mean, that's kind of. Now, Billy the Kid, I don't know what his problem was. I think he was just a psycho. He's kind of like Ted Braden was like Billy the Kid in World War II. I mean, just some people have no fear, Yeah. Let's see. Somebody says, I guess this is Jude, maybe. Mrs. Gunther didn't like being married to Max either. Well, I mean, I don't know. If your husband's writing books about how to pick up chicks, how to get laid, isn't that one of Gunther's books?
Yes. I have heard many things about Max, but I have talked to one journalist who interviewed Max, who knew him very well and still knows the children and still communicates with them, and that his children adored him. His children loved him, and that to me that's expected, but also a little telling that maybe the stories that I heard about him were at least exaggerated. He was, I mean, look, I've been there before too, where you will write anything for a paycheck.
Yeah.
If there's, I mean, I remember I worked for a company that I don't even want to mention, writing propaganda. And for $20, I would spend a couple hours putting out things I don't brag about anymore. So, if you're a working writer and if you can write a book about seduction and make your $8,000, you do it.
Yeah. I mean,
sells.
so yeah. And
like I have a stack of True magazines. I have a stack about 120 of the damn things.
Whoa.
And it's off. Every copy is awful. So the magazine with Max's divorce column, the next column is about dogfighting, and it glorifies dogfighting. And there are these big pictures of bleeding dead dogs.
Damn.
Right after. And that was just what the rag was. So it's not, again, you're a working writer, you're getting that paycheck. And I don't know what that says about Max. They did it for so long, but I try to think the best of people. And just based on his relationship with his kids, I think that my attitude towards Max has been a little too negative in the past.
Okay, that's smart.
I don't want to defend him because I don't know, but that's just the feeling that I get.
Sure. Let's see, a couple other things. Somebody's asking. Let's see. Somebody asked up here. Where are they? Okay. I gotta find where the person said it. The person's asking about. Oh yeah, it says, is there a forum or a site where I can see the latest discussions about the case? Yes. If you do not have a Facebook account, go get one. Okay, you can have a fake name even on there, whatever. Just get a Facebook account, and then you can type in the official DB Cooper group or the DB Cooper mystery group, both of them, and you join. You just say join, and you refresh the page, and you're automatically in there. That's the most current stuff for DB Cooper, is to go on the Facebook, join Facebook. If you don't have Facebook, and just type in DB Cooper official group or DB Cooper mystery group, both preferably, and you'll get all the content you need. Okay. Let's see. Somebody else had a good question, actually. Somebody says, how do we know that the sketch is accurate? Well, we don't. But it was drawn. The only one, I mean, look, this sketch right here was drawn with the stewardesses sitting there with the artist. It's the only one we have. Not this one. This one is the one that was drawn with the stewardesses sitting there with a guy with the best sketch artist maybe in the world at the time. Who knows? I mean, his Heinemann sketch is perfect. I mean, damn near close. So they sat there with this guy with a blank piece of paper, and he drew this. And that sketch was shown to the next best witness, Bill Mitchell, who said, I have no problems with it. Except he said, I think Bill said there's no turkey neck. He did complain about that. He said, that guy's got no turkey neck, but that's about it. Bill didn't have much complaints. Robert Gregory, all he could say was his nose should be a little bit wider. That's it. Lebissoniere said nose a little bit wider. That's it. Spreckle said the sketch is fine, except he wanted the forehead to be a little bit wider. That's it. So our best witnesses thought this sketch is correct. The problem is, a few days later, they added eyes to him. And when you add eyes to him, he looks way more feminine looking, I think. Wouldn't you agree? It looks. Yeah, it looks weirder.
Yeah. It's
this sketch that looks weird, not this one. Like that looks like a person a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
This sketch is the problem, because this is the one that they ran in the papers so much. And when this is published in newspapers, all these, if you look at this, he's got a lot of facial lines. He's got a lot of wrinkles. He's got wrinkles in his forehead, wrinkles around his eyes, wrinkles around his mouth, wrinkles around his nose. He looks older. His eyes look young, but the Bing sketch has wrinkles. But the problem is, when it's published in newspapers, those details get washed out. So he looks not wrinkled, and he looks 25. I mean, this guy does not. I mean, he looks older than 25 years old there, when you can actually see the detail of the sketch. So there's that. I think that's the sketch is the most accurate. Let's see. Do we have it without the shades? Yeah, somebody was just saying. Yeah, somebody said, it doesn't get better than Roy Rose. I mean, if I can find, I might end with that. The Heinemann sketch. If I can find that Heinemann sketch to show everybody, this is the same guy who drew that Cooper sketch. And he drew this from scratch, just like he drew the Cooper sketch from scratch. Let me see. It's going to be in my Heinemann folder. Here we go. I mean, this is close. That's not bad. Not bad at all. I mean, the hair, the lips are right. The nose is a little wrong. Not too bad though. But everything else looks pretty close. The hair looks a little spiky, but I don't know. Heinemann's hair was curly, but not spiky, but that's close, people. So that's the exact same sketch artist. So Roy Rose knew what he was doing. He actually died last year, sadly, because I would have loved to have talked to him. But anyway, yes, Mary John says Bing looks like an alien. Yeah, he does. But yes, Dodge Ram falling down. Yes, that is Michael Douglas from Falling Down, is the Heinemann sketch, 100%, which is a great movie, by the way. Watch it again. All right, folks. Well, let's see. That's pretty much it. So we've gone 2 hours now, and I've held up Marty's time. And anyway, so I'll just say that we're coming up on CooperCon, folks. If you're not coming, please come. It's a little late to get a plane ticket, but not really. We've got hotels. Like it's like, Marty has a small child, and things are complicated, but everybody else is going to be there. Who's somebody? If I had Marty on,
if I could make it, I would.
Exactly.
If there's any way, I would do it.
Yes, it's hard to explain how much fun it is to be around everybody who has the same complete nerd interest as you do, and who gets you. And it sounds cheesy to say that, but we are kind of a weird family, in a way, and we got dysfunction too. We've got some aunts and uncles and uncles and nephews and aunts and nephews who don't like each other, but sometimes they do like each other. We have siblings who don't like each other. My guy, Dave Feudman, me and Dave can send some mean texts to each other, but then the next day we're like, hey, what's up, man? It's like, it's totally fine. So it's nothing like that. So anyway, any parting words there, Marty?
No, obviously go to CooperCon if you can. Absolutely. I would go if I could. There's one more question about the Clara letter. Actually, it's about the Cooper letter in the Gunther book.
Okay.
I have run that letter against Gunther's. I have probably 800 or 900 pages of Gunther text in my Stylometry software, and I can run it in chunks against chunks. I think that Gunther influenced that, but I can't.
The Cooper letter, not the Clara letter.
The Cooper letter, I think, is something that he created either from memory or he did something else with it. Because it comes up as a partial match often enough against his writing chunks that I think that's the case. Don't know, and obviously with the sample size, you can't say anything for sure. It could be authentic.
The content also seems a little self-congratulatory.
Yeah, and I think this is pointed out a lot. The title of the article is perfect down to the hyphen, and that's something that you might know the title properly, but I don't know if you'll remember the capitalization and the hyphen perfectly as is in the letter, and to me that's suspicious. But I can't say for sure either way, and I don't know what to say.
I would think Gunther wrote that letter.
That's where I'm at, but I give up.
Yeah, well,
I can't say anything. If I can't say something for sure, 100% attribution, 99th confidence interval with 118,000 degrees of freedom, I'm afraid to say it now because there are those people out there who know what degrees of freedom are.
Well, I will say two things. Thank you, Marty. I will say two things with 100% certainty in this case. Number one, McCoy was not Cooper. Okay. And number two, DB Cooper did not carry a bed sheet onto that plane. Eric Eulis. Okay. That's probably, I remember I called Eric and I was like, Eric, what are you doing? I was like, come on, man, you found like some hookup bed sheet from a vagrant or something. Like, good Lord, man. He was like, well, I mean, he could have made a bat wing out of it. Like, it's like, so his mystery bag had a bed sheet in it. That's what it didn't have a walkie-talkie or goggles or gloves. It had a bed sheet in it from Kmart. Okay. Like, that's probably my favorite. I mean, Euless has some doozies. We love Eric, and I hope I see him in a couple of weeks. But he's a doozy. So on that note, we will end tonight, and I will say thank you to Marty, and hopefully next year maybe we'll see you, or at some point we'll see you at CooperCon for sure. And
for sure, I'll find a way.
Well, yes. All right, folks. Well, good night and good luck, as they say, and we will talk to you guys again soon. Bye.